Hi, everybody. Welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Tommy, and I'm once again joined by my lovely co host, Angel.
Hello.
Today, we're bringing you another coverage of a batch of Guiding Light episodes from 1995. So I'll roll the credits and we'll get right into it. So we technically watched 3.5 episodes, so 3 3/4 of episodes, but I feel like a lot was resolved or revealed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is the end of January, so I guess we must be going into sweeps, February sweeps.
hmm
Um, I totally forgot. Well, we can talk about this at the end because I don't. All right, so let's start with. Um, I guess we could talk about Annie and Joshua a
Yeah,
little
let's talk
bit.
about that.
So Mara snuck out and she got a cab and she went to visit Josh, which was cute.
Yeah.
Um, and Annie walks in and finds her there, like she like snuggled up to him, and she actually had a nice moment. She let her stay the night. She got her like a little mini
Any like
patient gown. Mara had her doll's leg wrapped like Joshua's because she said the doll
hmm
broke its leg. So then Annie went and wrapped it professionally.
hmm
That was cute. I was like, okay, I see this. I see what's happening. But that was really. Oh no, that's not all we saw. We then saw Annie with
Next day.
Lucy at the diner.
Yeah, we saw Annie with Lucy. Yep. But then the next day, remember this was when. So our episode got broken into what might have been a news report or could have been
Mhm.
the OJ trial. It's 95. It could have been anything. As Josh and Mara woke up, Eve and oh my gosh, what is Beth's mom's name? Lillian.
Okay.
Even Lillian came in. It seemed like they were going to reprimand Annie for letting Mara stay, but Eve kind of said, "No, we're not going to be as." It wasn't a big deal. So
Joshua kind of like gives her a glowing recommendation. He's like, she's a good
Mhm.
nurse. She does her job well. He's like, she gives shots good, sponge
Mhm.
baths good.
I noticed also that when before the next day, Josh gave Annie kind of like a look when she didn't see it.
Like a nice look. I don't even know
A
what you
nice
would
look,
call it.
yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah,
like, oh
like
my God, I love
like
you.
a nice it kind of indicate. I think because I already know what's going to happen, it
Yeah,
kind of indicated to me that he was interested in her.
it feels like foreshadowing, knowing with the
Foreshadowing, yeah.
future. um, Bridget's kind of getting on my nerves with her attitude,
She is.
honestly. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. So she runs a boarding house.
She
Is
owns a
that
boarding house company.
okay? And there's obviously there's like a dining area, a restaurant.
hmm
Um, and I guess one of the workers showed up late by
hmm
accident, and Bridget's, because she's so busy trying to keep what's the baby's name? Peter? Paul?
Peter.
Peter?
Yeah, they also call him Peanut, so yeah, I know that they also call him Peanut. Also, shout out to the person in the comments last time who gave us the rundown of like the whole Bridget Vanessa situation. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because I was confused.
So she's so like hell bent on keeping Peter away from Vanessa
hmm
that she's kind of overwhelmed.
hmm
She's just doing everything on her own.
Yeah, and also on top of that, Dylan, like Dylan leaving
Dylan
unexpectedly.
leaving, so she's a bitter Betty right now.
Yep.
I can't remember his name. Was his name Glenn, her uncle? It sounded
No,
like
Ed,
Ed. I think
Ed, Ed Bauer.
um he went up to check on her and she told him she wrote like 6 different letters. One was
Yeah.
funny, one was serious, one was her asking every question she wants to ask him, one was asking him no questions. And she's like, you need to tell me what to write. And he's like, you need to just tell him how you feel. And I'm like, it sounds like she told him how she felt in different ways.
Mhm.
So maybe she can meld all of them into one letter.
Yeah. And then the reason why Ed and Bridget are related is because of Maureen. So if you remember the character
Okay.
Maureen Bauer,
Mm-hmm.
they were married and then she got killed in a car accident. This was post all of that. Very famous death because everybody hates Jill Farren Phelps for this death. So one of the reasons why we hate Jill Farren Phelps. So.
Alan Michael comes to see Lucy at the diner to ask her, well, to offer her a position as his executive assistant. But she turns the job down initially because apparently she has feelings for him. This is a thing. And she doesn't want to, like, the lines to be blurred. And then, like, when things don't work out, she's heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
She keeps taking these, like, love quizzes out of magazines.
Newspapers and magazines and stuff like that. I remember those quizzes. I remember Cosmopolitan had those quizzes.
Right.
Actually, no. Teen Magazine did.
All of
Teen
them
Magazine,
did.
YM, everybody did. Everybody had those quizzes.
Yes. This is actually a scene where her and Annie were at the diner, and they were talking about Josh, and she's like, "We sort of had a date," and Annie thinks it's funny that Josh had to, like, put out a personal to find a date, because he doesn't seem like the type. And she's like, "What do you mean sort of date?" And she's like, "Oh," she's like, "When we realized that it was each other, we just kind of talked, and that was it." Speaking of the diner, so apparently Stavros knows Eleni's secret early on in the week, but we find out what it is pretty much. And she's afraid to tell Frank. And I really didn't get all the high, like, drama over, like, around the revelation of what it actually was. I'm like, why couldn't she just tell her husband that? And I didn't think it was a big deal.
They're already married. That's the thing. So
yeah. Alexandra's made good on her promise to what's his name?
Buzz.
I was gonna say Buzz, but it didn't feel right for some reason.
You could call him Frank Achilles, and that'll make it
about helping out the Fifth Street citizens, and she's given everybody $1,000 check to kind of help towards their rebuild. And Frank offers to let Eleni give that to her family back in Greece, who's struggling right now.
Aww.
So that was the first piece of the revelation, is that he now knows that her family is financially struggling in Greece. She seems to think maybe this will help get them through the winter, but it's still not enough. And we have a scene with her and Stavros arguing about it in the kitchen, and we find out that there was an arranged marriage, that she was promised to marry somebody in Greece.
I feel like I called that.
You may have, yeah.
I may have called that. I forgot.
But we weren't sure if that was, like, a cultural thing for Greece.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a cultural thing or not. Or I was like, wait, is she married? It's like there's like, so yeah, it's a whole, like, plot of land and businesses and stuff like that. And they were promised. She was promised a husband as a kid by her grandfather. It's a whole thing.
And Buzz overhears this argument through the doors, so now he knows. I think Eleni ends up telling him, doesn't she? Telling Frank?
Does.
Yeah. That was towards the end. So that was the revelation. That wrapped up, like, so I was like, wow, the priest really was, like, a red herring. I thought it was going to be, like, this scandalous thing with the priest. When
I know, right? That would have been great.
But yeah, so that was it for that story. Basically, there's, like, a dowry that needs to be paid somehow. It's, like, stopped because there's a vendetta against her family now. She mentioned somebody died. I don't know if it was the man she was promised to or somebody in the family, and now they're vengeful and want her family to pay. Like, her family, like, belongs to, like, a fishing community, and they won't let them fish, so they can't make a living. But that's what I took away from that.
Yeah. And then, like, I feel like, oh my God, I know they mentioned that she was married to Alan Michael. And
she was?
Family, yeah, she was married to Alan Michael. Like, before all this. I think there was even a love triangle between her and Frank and Alan Michael.
Really?
And they were like, well, wait a minute, like, you were married to Alan Michael, how come this didn't come up before?
Right. He has a lot of money.
which sounds like a thing that like we had different writers back then. This wasn't a story point back then.
Right. So we had got a little bit of Roger and Holly.
Mm-hmm.
We started with like Holly and Fletcher kind of seeing each other through her office window
Mm-hmm.
and having flashes of their night of passion.
Like,
She
oh, it
goes,
makes sense now.
so she goes home, where Blake and Roger are set up this romantic evening for her to come home to, and Blake wants to get out of there, so it looks like a surprise, and he's like, "Your mother's gonna call the cops on me if I'm here by myself." I'm like, that seems like the nature of their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But she walks in on them still there, and I was like, okay, so I get to see the young mom and her
Mm-hmm.
daughter. Because I believe that he could be her father, but I don't believe that Holly could be her mother because they look too close in age. But
Yeah,
okay.
because she was born in the 70s. So
Blake was
she was born in the 70s, late 70s, I think. So she came back like
30.
she came back 30, yeah, basically, yeah. But she was played by Brian Dennehy's daughter.
Uh-huh.
And then it was Sherry Stringfield, and then it was Elizabeth Kiefer.
Gotcha. And Holly basically, it says to him, she's like, I can't like be mad at you for something you didn't even do, and she's just like willing to like let it go and move forward, but she still needs time. She's like, I think at least for tonight, she's like, we should sleep in separate beds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was pretty much it for them. So Sid apparently has been a little bit of a firebug. He's not responsible for the huge fire that destroyed everything, but apparently he had been starting small fires, where there may have been like drug dealers or like crime happening, to kind of prove a point that the cops were not responding because it was like a bad neighborhood and they didn't care. And Nick writes a story about this, and the whole town seems to be like proud of him that he was drawing focus that the cops weren't doing their job.
Yeah.
What's his name? Ross is not happy that he was not informed about this.
I love the little moment when like Blake like crawls on the bed as he is yelling at Sid, nibbles his ear, and he's like, "Would you stop yelling at
Well, I could think when that scene was happening was when you told me that they were in a love triangle with Holly at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Was it with this actress, the love triangle?
It was the end of Sherry Stringfield and the beginning of Elizabeth Kiefer.
Gotcha. Blake. So I didn't know Frank runs the agency that Blake is a PI at.
Mm-hmm.
So Frank is a PI also? I didn't actually know what Frank's job was. I thought he was a
Frank is
doctor
a
for some reason.
PI. I think he would later become a cop or a detective. I know he worked for the Springfield Police in some fashion later, around the time I started watching the show.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about what his profession was. In my head, I thought he was a doctor or a lawyer.
Oh, no. He's not a doctor. Even though, like, practically everybody on the show is it's going to be a doctor at some point. Okay, I'm wrong. But it was just
they get like a 2-week like medical degree.
When you meet Rick Bauer, that's exactly what happens. He comes back this year.
So we got a little bit of the teen set or preteen set. I think they're like 13.
Yeah.
Bill is being bullied because it's been all over the tabloids about his mom being with a younger guy. And I didn't realize that was Michelle at first until somebody said
Rachel
Michelle.
Miner.
Yeah, I was like, oh, Macaulay Culkin's first wife.
Yes, I was about to say
that. So obviously I went to Wikipedia just to make sure.
Let me see.
Yeah. She was on for a while. She was on from like 89 to 90.
Yeah. I
95,
think
96.
okay, so I think there's like a mass exodus this year because I'm reading that a lot of people leave this year.
Really?
Yeah, so we're like, so this is gonna be an interesting year for us because there's gonna be a lot of like people leaving, people getting recast.
Hmm.
Like when I read like the Wikipedia page, I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot of 95s on the like people leaving in 95. So
When I read that she left in 95, I was like, "Ooh, I wonder if this is when Rebecca Budig comes on." And it is at the
yeah,
end of
it
the
is because when I watched the Christmas episode, that was her in it.
year.
Yeah,
Okay. Um,
which is a
so
yearly tradition for me. I watch the Christmas episode. So.
so Bill gets into like a pushing match, and he ends up basically like fist fighting these
Mhm.
kids. But he's the one that gets in trouble because he actually threw the punches. Um, and Vanessa comes down to the school to pick him up. He's suspended for 2 days, and she wonders if the other boys will be suspended, and the principal says no. Principal Dean, whoever it was,
It was the principal.
um, saying that even though they provoked it, he was the one that got violent.
At the place I work at, which is a school, provocation does get you suspended. So I was like side-eyeing the principal really hard for that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because around the time we were in school, because we were around the same age,
Mhm,
I feel like it was around the time they started implementing like a no tolerance policy, so everybody just got in
mhm.
trouble.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. Even which I had mixed feelings about because like what if you were just like mind your own business and somebody started messing with you and you get in trouble because somebody decided to be a dick.
Mhm.
So I always had like mixed emotions about that.
Yeah.
Um but anyway, back to the show. So she wants to know what all this was about and he won't say anything and they finally get home and he like lashes out at her. Just as Joshua and Mara return home. And it almost seemed like Josh, well, at least with Bill is concerned, he kind of seemed on Vanessa's side. Um, I like that little moment where like they
Mhm,
talked about his father and how like the Lewis men always make like these bad decisions.
mhm.
Um, and that they hugged at the end. I thought that was sweet. Um, I do you know when Billy gets out of jail? Is it this year or is it like
I
years later?
forgot because, like, I know Jordan Clark was going through some issues, and the one who went to jail, the Billy that went to jail was a recast.
Oh, okay.
So, I know he comes back down the line. I want to say it was around. It could have been around the time I started watching it, like 97 ish,
Okay.
but 97 ish, 98 ish, but he was in and out for a while in the 90s, and then well, in the late 90s, I mean, and then he's been on he was on very for consistently for quite a while until the end of the series. So
Okay. Nadine is on the lookout for some high executive job. She doesn't want to be stuck working at the diner. Like everybody's life is changing and they're moving on and moving forward. She's like, and I need that too. She doesn't want to work at the diner. So she's basically going on job interviews. And every time they tell her that she's not qualified and that she needs something, she uses that and spins it in the next interview. So like, oh, we're looking for somebody that's goal oriented or goal driven. So then the next interview, she's like, I'm very goal driven. Oh, also, one of the job interviews was ageist, and that's illegal.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
like,
he was
we're looking for somebody
very.
younger. I'm like, you can't say that, at least not
Can't say
now.
that. No. Now, unfortunately, you can like just say you can like spin it and saying like, "Oh, we're not the person you're looking for," and you can't, but not say that your age, not reveal that your age is.
Oh
You
yeah,
could have
it
said
definitely happens, but
it
like you
happens,
can't
but
say it.
it happens, because as I'm getting up there, as we're getting up there in age, and hopefully we don't have to change our jobs soon. I'm getting a little worried about that. So
Right. I think in the next one, she was even like, like I'm hip. Like she was like, I get along with all ages or whatever. Like she like spun it
mhm,
in a way to like, and it just wasn't working out for her.
yeah.
Um, so there was a scene where she's like feeling defeated and she's back at the diner and she goes outside and a guy comes out. Is he a regular character or was that just like a random nobody that was talking to her outside?
I don't know. I don't know who it was.
Because we kind of saw Buzz peek out and saw them talking, and he looked a little jealous. And I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if he was the guy that she was talking to. At first, I thought he was like gonna hit on her, like it was like some random guy. But then they seemed to know each other, so I was like, I don't know who he is.
Yeah, somebody help us out in the comments. Because they didn't even say, like, usually in dialogue, they would say who the guy's name was, and I'd be like, okay, let me look him up. And then, they didn't even reveal a name or anything like that. So,
So we saw HB and Vanessa's father.
Henry.
Do they all live there?
I believe they do.
Because then I started thinking, is this supposed to be like a mansion? Because the living room, I was like, this feels like a small mansion.
It does. It's later Josh and Reva's house.
Yeah, that's what I remember it being.
Yeah.
I remember seeing cats in the house.
It's Josh and Reva's house. Yeah. So it throws me off a little bit because I'm like, wait, this is when the clone stuff happened.
Yeah, I'm like, Vanessa's living there, Josh is living there, Mara's living there. Is Shane born yet? I would assume
Shane is born. Yeah, Shane was actually the reason. Okay, I don't want to say it like that, but Shane's birth was the reason Reva died because she had postpartum psychosis. So, and that's when she drove off the Florida Keys bridge that was out and said, "I'm a coming, bud."
I'm sorry, I laugh every time I hear that. I know it's a serious thing, but
it was very serious. But I like to make fun of it, just like, "Walk, damn it!"
She committed. Yeah, and now it appears HB is living there, and Vanessa's father, and yeah, it's a full house.
Yeah.
I know there's a stairwell. I don't know how many bedrooms are upstairs.
Hey, look! I'm sure there's a stairwell on top of a stairwell on top of a stairwell on top of a stairwell.
So, okay, I guess we could talk about what's his name, Gabrielle and
David.
So I don't know if we missed things or if this is just what would they next cut to, because I'm side-eyeing the soap. Sometimes they do this with the minority characters. Mm-hmm. They kind of just like don't give you the beats. They just like will drop scenes here and there of their story. But last we saw, Gabrielle was offered money from his mother, Vivian.
Vivian, yep.
To leave him. I think it was, what was it, 5,000?
Yeah, it was about that.
And we saw her put the check down. She didn't really accept it. She put it down, which made me think that David was going to find it and it was going to be a fight. But when David came back from the store because they were painting the apartment, she was gone and the paint was tipped over. So now we pick up that he's, I guess, at an INS facility.
Well, remember there was also like INS agents at, I think it was the 5th Street Diner. Yeah. And he confronted them. Mm-hmm. So that was where we left. That was also where we left off.
Okay, right. And they had questioned her or them at the New Year's party. That was the first time we saw them. Again, this was something that felt really resolved because this all happened this month. But we find out that they arrested her because she lied on the questionnaire. And she tells him that she's a prostitute. So I was like, oh, is this the end of her? Is she just like gone now? She wasn't popular, nobody liked her, and they just were like, all right.
That's the indication I'm getting on the Wikipedia page and say, oh, Gabrielle wasn't well liked, so they kind of jettisoned that story. I'm also wondering, shout out to the Facebook guiding light group that I'm a part of. I had to figure out like, okay, who is writing this show, because remember, we don't get credits when we watch this.
Yeah.
Douglas Anderson is writing the show, and I'm wondering if because there was a writer switch that they had to like kind of jettison a lot of storylines to end, because when you get new writers, General Hospital, when you get new writers, you're like, okay, I want to end everything the other writers did, and there was like a team of 4 writers, which included, ironically enough, in some of the mix of those writers, Patrick Mulcahy, who is going to be writing for General Hospital.
Nice.
So there were 4 writers, and then they just pared it down to 1, Douglas Anderson. So I'm wondering if this is like Fifth Street Fire is just like his big like blow up start thing, and then they just end the rest of the storylines by the end of January to get in the February sweeps to like.
I think Jill Farren Phelps leaves this year also, so I wonder if
that
was her big like exit explosion.
She does. I don't know. Now I'm gonna have to go back to the group and say, okay, when did Jill Farren Phelps leave? Because I want to know. I want to know when the swap happens. That we get a lot of characters leaving, a lot of characters coming back.
Well, if you go to the Wikipedia for Guiding Light, I think they have like a list of executive producers and writers, and it tells you like the years of their tenure.
Mm-hmm. But I wanted a month.
Oh, you want to know months?
Oh, I want the month. I want the months.
I want to date. Like, I want to end date.
I want that exact pin. I want to pinpoint the exact.
I want something to look forward to.
I want to know when I'm going to be hearing the announcer making his bank being like the role of this is now being played by that. He makes his money just by doing that.
So Gabriella, is that her name? Tells David that his mother offered her the check and that she accepted it, and that she's really doubling down like, I used people, I used you, this was never real, and she basically pushing him away. And then when he leaves, she tears up the check, and she clearly didn't mean anything she said. And I was like, is this it? Are we never going to see you again? I was like, because I actually felt bad for the character.
Yeah.
I actually was interested.
It wasn't an Ariana situation from Poor Charles. It was more just like, oh.
I actually wanted to know more. Like, I was actually invested in this story.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen her and Vivian go at it a few more times. Like, but yeah, that seemed to wrap up that story. Did I forget anything? That seemed to be all like the big stuff.
Yeah, it's all the big stuff.
Alan Michael was settling into his role as president of Spalding
Enterprises.
Lucy ended up inadvertently taking the job because did she just like show up and start answering the phone?
She showed up, started answering the phones.
Did they close a deal and like Alan Michael was like so excited and he like went to get the champagne, but when he turned around, she was gone. She like go off. So I guess she's accepted the job, but she's kind of keeping her distance. She doesn't want to like fraternize. Yeah, I think that was everybody, right?
That was everybody.
Nadine.
We did Nadine. We did Josh. We did David and Gabrielle. Was there something you wanted to say at the end that you were going to say at the beginning?
Oh yeah, it was the Gabrielle and David thing.
Okay.
Yeah. We kind of have Matt struggling to deal with Vanessa's family. Like, I guess Vanessa feels he kind of overstepped in reprimanding Bill because of the way he was speaking to her. So he doesn't really know like quite like where the line is, like, because he is the new boyfriend. Her father and HB seem to have accepted it pretty quickly. Joshua, not so much, even though he, for Bill's sake, pretended to.
I feel like he's also getting like, I feel like, so there was like a brief scene where him and Ed were at the Ed is Matt's uncle, were at like some kind of like gym or something, and they were in the locker room, and some guy tried to kick Matt out, but they were like, no, my uncle's here. And then Ed just comes out and says like, oh no, we're related. So he's getting some of that too.
He also seems to be struggling to find work. Because he even mentioned like, if you hear anything about like an opening or job at the hospital, let me know. He offered, I guess he was staying at a hotel or motel or something, and he offered to like work off the money he owed for the room. And the owner or the manager was kind of like, oh, but you're with Vanessa, she'll just pay it off or something. And he's like, no, I'm paying it off myself. So that seems to be like a little bit of a struggle for him. I guess like the class differences.
Yeah, classism. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that was it. We mentioned Roger and Holly. Roger and Holly.
Raji. Well, they also call him Roger the Dodger.
Yeah, that was mentioned.
Yes.
And I was like, I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah. If you listen to Daytime Confidential, they mention it too when they mention Roger.
Oh, one thing I wanted to mention about Fletcher. So he ended up going out for drinks and he met a woman and he brought her back to the newspaper. And they were kissing and then he like fantasized that it was Holly he was kissing.
Yep.
And this woman seemed like DTF. She was just like, we can go back to my place. And he was just like, he's like, I know I'm gonna kick myself for this, but like I have to do something. And she's like, all right, well, hit me up. So that was a thing. I like Fletcher. He's funny.
Yeah. You know, his wife I don't think it was at the time. He was married to one of the head writers of the show, Pamela Long.
Oh, really?
Yep. And then he was on oh my god, what was the name of the show? The Jeffersons. He was on the Jeffersons for a season.
Oh, was he?
Yep.
I think that was it.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you have anything? Do you have notes or anything else you wanted to mention?
No, everything that I mentioned was we brought it up. Well, actually, I do want to say that, kind of piggybacking off of what you said about the David and Gabriella situation. I do feel like either it was the way to jettison that story to end because of viewer feedback, or because I think they did have the viewer feedback line at the time, disrespect of minority characters. I think that was also that can be factored into that.
I kind of just like want one more scene where David finds out that she lied just to push him away, just because it feels messed up that that her character was done like that. But it's soaps; it's not always fair. Some people get thrown under the bus. Even if he just finds out like she never cashed the check, I just need like something to like vindicate her.
Yeah, just something a little conflict between Matt and Vivian too.
Yeah, something. I hope we see more of Vivian. I really like her.
Yeah, I like Vivian.
I like her bitchiness.
We don't get that with a lot of African American characters, so
yeah, and they're wealthy. We don't actually ever see that, also.
Right? Because like when you watch like soaps, like General Hospital, they're kind of Portia is more
upper class.
I don't think it's upper. I think I want to say upper middle to upper class because she's a doctor. Okay. But I don't know. I feel like we need more of that on soaps these days.
Yeah.
Like we need to flesh out the African American characters. Like.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, I know.
We need more layers, not just talk tos. We need actual stories.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of Guiding Light. As always, you can find us on all the socials at Queers and Soaps. And until next time, have a great day.
Bye.